Now I'll talk about some extra or supratextual features which may be very important in understanding the meanings while interpreting a typical discourse, especially the discourses related to politics and media. These supratextual features are very important because these cover some important contextual features which help us figure out the meaning in a certain context. And they primarily deal with the question, for example, what consequences do text have for the whole of discursive field, or what kind of impact these discourses might have generated on the field of action to which they are related to. In other words, we can see that how could they possibly shape the evolution of social and political issues. In this regard, we can see as an example that what impact did President Bush speeches had on the discourse about war on terrorism and then following policy of Bush administration. What kind of impact Bush's own discourses had on these elements, and how did they help to shape public opinion about war and terror? So these could be possible impacts of the discourse generated by the president of USA about war on terror in the last decade. How did this impact on institutional mechanisms and material practices in the United States and other parts of the world? And what kind of possible political social impact would have a certain discourse generated? So these can be understood with help of some kind of supratextual features, which are very important, as I said earlier, in understanding the text critically. Probably for this reason, Woodek and Mayer would argue that dialectical relationship between particular discursive practices and the specific fields of action in which they are embedded are very important to be understood. How they are connected, what kind of possible impact they would generate or might have generated already. We need to know it, and this is probably one of the areas we've seen has been missing in critical discourse analysis studies so far. It also looks at, in simple words, the concrete effects of discourse on some kind of social or political actions. While discourse analysts have concentrated their attention on text, many of discourse modes of operation are extra or supratextual. I mean, they are beyond the text, and these needs to be understood in order to make something out of a certain text, and these might be realized beyond or independently of a given text. Media discourse is a very important arena for public debate. Therefore, it is very important to understand such effects of media discourse, or the effects on which media discourse is based upon, the effects of the policies of the governments, the effects of certain ideological orientation of media groups. They all need to be understood in a proper way so that we can have a better view and deeper view of media discourses. Uh, so far, we do not find a very clear-cut mechanism to understand this kind of effects, though many people have opined and spotted that this kind of impact should be investigated, but they simultaneously also have pointed out the difficulty to understand such effects. Uh, in this situation, Annabella Carvalho has been very vocal that this has been one of the missing link in the understanding and analysis of media discourse, and for this reason, probably she has proposed a kind of mechanism to understand such impacts, and that is called discursive effects. She thinks that discursive effects should be investigated in order to look into the impact of a certain discourse. According to her, discursive effects are processes that are linked to text but occur outside the text or above it. They are quite outside the text. Moreover, these are not the direct consequences may not be the direct consequences of an action by the actor who is producing certain discourse, they may have been conveyed indirectly and would have been creating an impact incidentally, maybe sometimes, but these needs to be investigated very, very deeply. Examples of such discursive practices can be seen in some kind of structuration, discourse institutionalization, and closure. Discourse structuration refers to the process of domination of the terms of the debate, creating such debates around certain topics, terms which are intended to be discussed by a certain powerful group or a media group. So, for example, the discourse of the American administration clearly had an effect of structuration of the discourse in media after 9/11. What administration thought and conveyed in their press conferences was the main part of media discourse on 9/11. Discourse institutionalization basically refers to the transformation of institutional structures and practices in a way that embodies a certain discourse. So you create certain mechanism within the institutions which support a certain discourse or provide people with a certain discourse. Although the process of discourse institutionalization may result from and originate in certain texts, it usually also has an extra textual dimension which is supported by the context in which they are produced. Then in the closure is basically the resolution of a conflict which has been created in a discourse, and maybe we called as some kind of termination of a controversy. And this is also sometimes institutionally supported. People provide certain kind of discourse, powerful groups or governments provide certain kind of discourse uh, to provide a solution of a problem, closure of a problem in the way they like it to be. So they convey only that kind of information they want people to know. So in this situation, there can be some kind of structuration, institutionalization, and closure coming together. And this is how we can investigate by looking from the lens of these elements, and many other may possibly be coming to us in future. We can look into the effects of discourses on the targeted or on some kind of anticipated audience.